If you want to revisit it, I'll have it up on my website. But let's get started. Let's get started. So in this hour, I'll share a little bit about my journey, my practice with connecting to my soulful alchemy. And we'll get into a few exercises, which is why I invited you to bring your journal with you today. And also share a little bit about my philosophy and how I created and designed this 3-month coaching program following the moon cycles and also having an understanding of the elemental energies. And then I'll get a little bit into the overview of the program. So let's just drop in. Let's just begin. Let's get going. That's why you all are here. So just take a moment to drop in. If you want to close your eyes, you can, or just soften your focus. Just take a moment to drop into wherever you're at. Just really acknowledging how your body feels in this moment. And allowing your breath to be whatever it needs to be in this moment. You don't need to make it any more than what it is. You are already here. And so just give yourself permission to be here even more. Whatever that looks like or feels like for you in this moment. So I invite you all to take a moment to just drop in and tune in to the space of your heart. And as you do so, just notice how there's this beautiful, vibrant golden light in the space of your heart. Luminescent, radiant. And so just take a moment to sit in that light, to sit in your heart, and be in that light. And as you take the biggest breath you've taken all day, take a moment to listen. And listen to what is wanting to come through you, what is wanting to meet you in terms of your vision or your soul purpose. And though your mind may want to get caught up in the grandeur of a soul purpose or life vision, just allow yourself to meet with what's trying to come through you. How is it trying to meet you? Maybe it's a shape, a color, a light frequency, or something that's so familiar to you that only you would understand what that means. And so just sit there and listen. See what shows up. And so allow that presence of your vision, of your soul purpose, just take root there in your heart. Allow the light of your heart to nurture and sustain it while we're together in this time. And so come into the fullness of your body. Step apart. Just notice what has softened. Maybe what has eased in your body. And so as you start to fully come back, open your eyes when you're ready. And just take a few minutes. And for those of us on the West Coast, it's 11:11, so magical time. So just take a moment. Just take a moment to come back, come back, come back. Open your eyes. And just for a few minutes, write down what showed up for you. What did that seedling of your soul purpose or life vision look like or felt like or sounded like for you? And allow that to just be expressed in any way that it wants. Through words, through images, maybe colors. Just let it be. And if you felt like nothing showed up, then just notice how you're feeling right now. And reflect on that. So just take a few minutes. Just take a few minutes. While you're writing and just checking in and seeing all of you. So beautiful to be with you. So glad that you could all join me today. So you have about one more minute. Let's finish that thought. So, to create this connection with your soul purpose or life vision could feel overwhelming and daunting because we feel like maybe we got to do it all right now, and we don't. It's a process. It's a lifelong journey, right? And it unfolds in different ways and in different rhythms. And I think how I came to this for myself, I always knew that my purpose is to be an educator. That I always knew. My mother would tell me that as a child, I would read stories to my stuffed animals. I would play teacher. I would play school. And then during story time, I would take over at school, and I think I was just a little bossy and pushy, but I really just loved doing that, right? And so there's things that you know that you love doing, and sometimes you just dismiss them as, hobbies, or no, there's no way I can do that. I don't know enough. I don't have the resources. I don't have the whatever reason or thought has come to you as to why you cannot or why you should not, right? Aren't those two phrases? I can't and I shouldn't. Just, this is the moment, right? This is where the story comes in. And so knowing that my purpose is to be an educator, I did not know what that would look like. And so I followed a path of what I perceived it to be. I went to school. I obtained several degrees. I followed the rules. I did what was asked of me, and I've had a beautiful career as a college professor for over 20 years. And then a time came where I had to make a choice. And I'll be quite honest with you. When that time came, it felt like an ultimatum. And I didn't feel comfortable. But at the the time, I was already in my wellness practice, as well as managing another small business, a bakery. It's good. It's called Good Mexican Girl. That's my other brand. And I was also teaching. So I always had one foot in and one foot out, right? But what I noticed for myself, my story was at the time, I cannot afford to be an entrepreneur, right? Because to me, those folks who are entrepreneurs were very affluent, had the time, had the resources, could fully invest. And that was my story. I cannot afford to be an entrepreneur. I need that steady paycheck. At the time was every month, right? As educators, we got paid once a month. And so it's like, I need that steady paycheck to provide for my livelihood. And so I really believed that. I mean, it felt true. It felt true at the moment. And so when this moment came that I had to make a decision, I gave myself time, I gave myself space, and I reflected on it. And so I could either choose to continue the path of teaching college, or I could choose to follow the path of going full-time into my wellness practice. So I'm going to give you a little bit more context around this. I had been calling in a space for me to practice. At the time, I was in transition, and I didn't have a space to do my practice, so I would do it at public events or at people's homes. So I was really calling in a space. And when this moment of the crossroads came, I was like, what do I do? Because guess what? The space showed up, right? And so following my story, I cannot afford to be an entrepreneur. What follows that? I can't afford a space on my own, right? Sound right? I cannot afford a space on my own, right? So that would be a valid reason why not to take the space that presented itself. Now, mind you, I had been asking for it. Please help me find a space, right? I want to do this full time. What does that look like? And so it happened. The space was there, and I had a choice to make. Now, mind you, there is no wrong choice. You will get to where you're going regardless of the choice that you make. I truly believe this. There is no wrong choice, right? It may take you a little longer or maybe a little quicker. That's probably the only difference, right? But there is no wrong choice. So I gave myself time, and I said yes. I said yes to going full-time into my practice. So here I am in my practice. Remember, this is the story, right? So I can't afford to be an entrepreneur. I can't afford my own space. Now, what do you think happens if I still believe I can't afford my own space? Do you succeed or do you fail? Go ahead and put it in the chat. If I still believe my story that I cannot afford my own space, would I succeed or would I fail? Go ahead, put it in the chat. Right? Yeah. A few of you are starting to chime in. I would fail. Right? I would fail. Yeah. 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 Feel free to share with everyone. Yeah. Right? If I still believe that, so I had to work through my story. What's the root of this story? Right? What's the root of me believing that I didn't have the resources to make this happen? So it is in this space, right? It is in this space, it is in this moment that I really had to work through my own limiting beliefs, right? So I invite you now to just take a moment and write, what is your story? Because there's a story there that you keep telling yourself when you shouldn't do something or when you can't do something, right? There's a story there for you. What's the story, right? What's the story for you all? What's the story, right? So take a moment, take a few minutes. It could be, a story like, I don't deserve it. I don't know enough. Worthy. I'm not lovable. Those are a few examples, right? A few of my stories have been, I have to prove my value, right? Or I can never have nice things because I ruin them or I lose them. So then I would not buy nice things for myself, right? So yeah, so just take a moment to reflect. What's your story? What's your story? And as you do, just start noticing what starts waking up in your body when you actually acknowledge that story, right? Maybe that energy is living somewhere in your body right now, in this moment. Beautiful. Take a few more seconds to wrap up that thought of what is your story and what are you noticing right now in your body. Beautiful. All right. So, working through that story, I had to come to an understanding of what was at the root of that, right? That I cannot afford. And so I had to unwind the energy of that story, right? What was the root of that? And so for me, it was something that I realized that it was the thing that put things on pause for me, right? But when I remembered times that I didn't have all the resources, but I made it happen, like when I was in college and I went to study abroad in Oxford. How is this Chicana going to study in Oxford? Why Oxford of all places? But nevertheless, there was this opportunity at college. I wanted to do it. My first professor, first semester, was one of the faculty on that study abroad program. And I was like, I'm going to Oxford. And so I did. I pulled it together. I filed the application, like literally, I ran into the dean's office with my application right before the deadline. I had my boss at one of my first jobs co-signed a loan for me, right, so that I could get it because we weren't sure if the financial aid was going to come in on time. And it happened. I went to Oxford for a semester, right, at 18 years old. And so when I remembered, when I actually focused, changed the energy on what I wanted, it made it happen. I got it. And I had the most incredible time, most incredible adventures. And so knowing your story, understanding what's at the root of it, and changing the energy of that, right? How do we change the energy of that? We meet it. We have compassion. We have love for whatever pain or trauma or hurt cause that to take root in your body, in your field, in your energy field, right? And so as I tended to that, I came to a greater connection to my own practice. That it was in that time that I actually came to a connection and understanding of the family members, my great-great-grandmother and her mother and their mother, and how these women were practitioners as well in their own way, herbalists, midwives, curanderas. And I connected to that. I connected to that lineage. I connected to that history. And then I remembered, oh, wow, that's right. 20 years ago, I wrote a poem to this patron saint of everything erotic, sensual, and love, Santa Perversa. You can actually see her over my right shoulder here. And in that poem is a prayer to Santa Perversa, right? Santa Perversa, liberate us of all unhealthy loves. Give us, bless us with your gifts of seduction and give us nights of insatiable ecstasy. That was the prayer in the poem. And I would have friends tell me, oh my God, I prayed to Santa Perversa. I would laugh. I thought it was a joke. But no, they did. They seriously did. And things would start happening for them, right? And I was like, wow, maybe I should pray to Santa Perversa and like change this dynamic in my love life, right? But nevertheless, when I was full-time in my practice, met with what was that limiting belief, what was the root of that, things started to change so fast. that what got in that time is that I created a hybrid modality for myself that made sense to me. I'm a craniosacral polarity practitioner. I do energy work. And so when I understood the work that I was doing 20 years ago through a prayer in a poem, Santa Perversa, and what I did, in my practice, I was like, oh, I do love limpias, right? They're energetic cleanses of the heart. And so this is helping clients to prepare the heart space to receive what it's calling in and to release what's no longer in alignment, right? Things started to connect, and I kid you not, within the first 6 weeks of opening my practice full time, I had my rent covered for the following 6 months. Let that land for a little bit for you all, right? That shifted. Right? Now this is going to be different for everybody, but when you do meet that limiting belief or beliefs, get to the root of how it rooted itself in your field, understand it, come with love and compassion, then you get to shift the energy of that, right? And I'll be honest, this limiting belief still comes up in my field, right? I mean, for me personally, with all of that's happening worldwide and shelter in place and the pandemic, I had to meet with that again, right? Because the other story that showed up was I can't do my practice if I don't have a brick and mortar. And my reality was I had to release my brick and mortar, right? But now I'm in this space with you all, and in the span of 4 months, I have seen more clients than I have seen in 2 years, right? But again, we just have to meet with those beliefs and those habits with much love and compassion. So for our third exercise, I want you to take a moment, and I want you to think about that one time where you felt most vibrant, most alive, most dynamic, most joyful. I shared one, me applying to a study abroad program, and I made it happen, right? I want you to really think about that moment and that memory. And what's so beautiful about our mind is that it has no sense of linear time. So right now, as you're thinking about that favorite moment, that memory where you felt most alive, most vibrant, most dynamic, really, truly yourself, right? Just take a moment. And as you're in that moment, in that memory, just notice what sensations are starting to be felt. Maybe you're remembering your favorite outfit that you wore, right? Maybe you're remembering like what that day or night looked like, who was there. And mind you, your mind right now is going to try to be like, oh, but then remember what happened? So just invite your mind to go on the journey with you, to just remember how it felt to be your most dynamic, joyful, most alive self, right? And so notice, what's that feeling? What's that quality that's starting to come out? Maybe some characteristics. Maybe there's something about you that you forgot that you were, right? And so start to play with that, like free write. What are some of those characteristics or those qualities that you liked when you are your most dynamic, vibrant, joyful self, right? And as you reflect on that, finish this statement. I'm at my best when. I'm at my best when. And if you feel like sharing some of that in the chat with me, feel free to do so. I'm at my best when. So go ahead and take another minute. Start wrapping up that thought. You have about 30 seconds. Oh, I love that. I love that. Can I share that? I love what you wrote. Can I share that? I love it because you're all sending it to me privately. You know, I did this exercise recently. Actually, I did it with more moments, right? I did it with different moments from when I was very young, right? And so this was actually a beautiful reminder for me, but I ended up coming up with I am at my best when I trust my intuition as an expression of my divine gifts, right? When I trust my voice and intuition as an expression of my divine gifts. That's what came up for me when I did that. And it was a great reminder because I was like, oh, right. I forgot this is who I am. And so as we come into the practice, so part of my practice and part of my journey is, you know, what meeting with these with unwinding these limiting beliefs. It's important the way I present it. Let me put it this way: the way I present it is to understand it through 4 core values: security, wholeness, worthiness, and love. And when you understand it through those 4 lenses or through those 4 core values, you get to reflect on how some of these patterns showed up in your life and created unconsciously some habits or behaviors or belief systems intended to protect you, right? Intended to protect you. And they served you then. But because they're still there in your unconscious, they sometimes come up when you don't really need them anymore, right? And so it ends up maybe somewhat sabotaging, right, your plans and getting in the way of you meeting the fullness of your soul purpose or your life vision. And so this is why when we do that shadow work, right, some call it shadow work, but when we meet those things that caused us pain or are of deep hurt with much love and compassion, we can then have a greater understanding of how these things take root, right? For me, it looked like understanding this dynamic between my mother and I, right? And I've shared this with clients before. I've been training my mother to love me how I want to be loved for over 25 years, right? And it's like, wait, what do you mean? And sometimes you got to train people, right? You really got to tell them how you want to be loved. And you model that with them as well. And now we have a very loving, healthy relationship. And it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful. But it wasn't always that way, right? And so as I was working to unwind limiting beliefs or these habits or come to more awareness with that, when they show up, I don't react the same. And this is how you notice your growth, right? When you don't react the same to something that seems quite familiar and you change it and you just see it like, oh, okay, why are you showing up today? What's going on? And it just gives you a moment of reflection, right? The other thing that was part of my experience or journey is what I share here, to cultivate your soulful alchemy. So what is this, right? What is this? What is soulful alchemy? For me, it's really understanding your unique makeup, right? Each one of us has our gifts. We really do. And you can practice these gifts in all parts of your life, right? It doesn't matter if you are the postal clerk right? It doesn't matter if you're the teacher. It doesn't matter if you're the hairdresser. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but that you can share your gifts, right? In all practices of your life, in all areas of your life, is part of the soulful alchemy. So for me, the soulful alchemy is the way of honoring your unique gifts and integrating, right, what is coming from your higher self, from your source, God, universe, spirit, however you connect to that, and bringing that into this body, into this moment, into this world, right, bringing it into the earth, and having those gifts really showcase who you are, showcase what you do, showcase how you are, right? And in return, as you're doing that practice more and more in your everyday life, this also then deepens your connection, right? Allowing your soul to integrate and elevate it up, right? So it's this process of bringing it down, evolution, taking it up, evolution, right? And the soul is in that dynamic. It's constantly moving up and down. It's not stagnant. You may feel stagnant. Your soul's not stagnant, right? And it's bringing down information. It's letting it settle. It's taking its roots. It's showing its fruit. And then you bring it up and share, elevate it up, right? And in that practice, you are able to be more present. You're able to be, I would say, even more patient, more understanding, right? And what resulted as I was doing this more and more and more and more, I realized that when I tuned in, it resulted in this practice of really tuning into divine love. Now, how I define that for myself is that my heart is connected to my spirit. And when things are not in alignment with that, it was so much easier for me to say no to things. Like, I knew what was and what wasn't. And that, I think, was huge for me because I will be honest, I am a Libra. I like to be a peacemaker. I'm like, okay, let me make sure everyone's good. Let me make sure everyone's okay. And in so doing, I would just really have my own personal boundaries be totally blown out, right? But when things were not in alignment with that, it was so much easier for me to say yes or to say no, right? It really was. Even with things that, seem inconsequential, right? Like going out with your friends, right? Oh yeah, I really want to be with you. Yeah, let's do this. Or, that's just not the space for me right now. I just can't be in that kind of environment anymore. Cool. Let's meet for coffee instead, right? And there's no drama around that, right? But you honor more who you are. And so, as I shared earlier, what came out of this moment, out of finally honoring, right, my calling, being in my practice, the modalities of the love limpias, right, clearing out that heart space to receive, to get it ready to receive what you're calling in and to release what's no longer in alignment. I also follow the cycles of the moon. And for me, this has been my work. This has been my practice. Now, this was my practice before I got into everything before that's listed up here before. That was always my practice, following the cycles of the moon, right? The new moon, the quarter moon, the full moon, the waning moon. And for me, why that works is because it helps keep me attuned to a rhythm that the earth is teaching me. I am very airy. I like to be in my thoughts. And so to ground is very challenging for me. But if I can follow something like the cycles of the moon, it helps me just to pay attention. What do I want to call in on the new moon? Okay. How do I make this happen in the first quarter moon? All right, what do I need to get in place, right? For those of you who are my earth people here on this call, I mean, you know this, right? You are really great at planning it out, mapping it out, and you get it done, right? You get it done. So for some of us, that's not our talent, right? But when we do follow the cycles of the moon, it helps us bring that awareness, right? Full moon, give gratitude to what has shown up, right? You acknowledge. It takes a moment. Oh, wow, I really did accomplish all that. Or, wow, I really moved on this project that's going to be a year project or 6 months, and things just got accelerated a little bit more. Great. And then just start to release, right? For those of you who do gardening, right, it's the pruning. It's the pruning that has to take place. You got to till the soil, you got to prune, right? You got to take care, you got to water. But the elements also help out with that. Our ether, right, creating the space to be ourselves. The air to really start to call in those thoughts, that imagination, right, to invite it, to bring it into the fire, create some new dynamic action to get things going, right, to come into our water, see what connections we can make, how can we be resourced, and then to bring it into the earth. What does this look like, right? So earlier I invited you to really think about that soul purpose, that life vision. What did that look like? And for some of you, you're probably a little bit more along the way. You're ready to make it happen. You're ready to earth it, so to speak. And some of you, it's still an idea, a concept, and it's making its way down. Wherever you're at in that spectrum, I find that when we work with the elements and the energies of those elements and the moon cycles, things start to move in really beautiful, dynamic ways. So I just want to take a moment and just have us take a breath, because I've just shared a lot of information with you all. And I just want to take a moment to see how is this landing for you all? How is this landing for you all? Any questions coming up for you? Feel free to share in the chat if you want. Cool. All right. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So, my philosophy in creating this coaching program through in this way is that I find, for me, it create a sacred space for this work, and yeah, absolutely, let it settle in. Yeah, and really just I appreciate that you're sharing, that your heart's opening up, and that you're really starting to connect to what's happening. So, you know, I think for right now, in this moment, it's just really about tuning in a little bit to that frequency or that vibration of your purpose, right? Again, don't get so overwhelmed with, oh my goddess, life purpose. That's too daunting. I'm daunted. I like want to get under the covers when I think about it that way. However, when you get to create a sacred space for it, it helps to ground that energy. It also helps to just create a ritual or something that's really unique to you, right? Whether the creation of that sacred space is you praying, you meditating, you having an altar, a combination of any of those things, right? This is something that shows up. This is something that shows up, right? And you'll start noticing that when you connect to that, the energy of your vision and your purpose, it will pull you forward, right? It will pull you forward. So much so that you can trust it again. I love this thing that Mark Nepo shares about trust. It's about connecting to your heart. Isn't that beautiful? Connecting to your heart. And I find that, you know, at some point in our lives, we got disconnected from our heart, right? Which is why it makes it a little challenging for us to trust again, right? We put a lot of caveats or a lot of tests, right? Maybe knowing tests to people to prove themselves, right? And so just to remember that to trust is to follow your heart, right? And so, as I shared before, by following the cycles of the moon, that's another way that this program, I've designed it. We actually start on the eve of the full moon. We start, right as that new moon is going into the fullness of the moon, and we end on the full moon, right? We end on the full moon. And so I will teach you how to work with those elemental energies. As a polarity practitioner, this is what I do with my clients. And so I will teach you how to work with that, to understand your energy and your makeup. And so I begin the cycles on September 1st, January 1st, and May 1st, right? And it's 3 months. It's a 3-month commitment. And notice that I start on these earth signs, right? Our Virgo, our Capricorn, and our Taurus. Because earth signs help us get into the work, right? They literally help us get into the earth, right? And we have to do that work. We have to do that work. And so we start with the first unit of unwinding limiting beliefs. So we start to meet with some of those unconscious habits, right? Those limiting beliefs, those stories, right? That you just started to reflect on one today, and meet what's at the root of that, right? Meet what's at the root of that. And as we do that, we get to change the dynamic and the energy of that. Moving into our air, right? We come into cultivating your soulful alchemy. And so it's really calling in, right, those thoughts, calling in that energy, creating a new dynamic, a new connection, right, with our own gifts, with our own alchemy. And then we culminate in the 3rd month with our water, activating divine love. Because really this is about our connection, right? Not only our connection to ourselves, but it's strengthening that connection of our heart alignment to our spirit. And also what ends up happening, that when you do this, it radiates out through all your relationships. For me personally, I have been in the most healthiest relationship I've been in my life, right? And I've been doing this work. I have been doing this work, right? But also I see how that connects even with my relationship with my mother. I'll share an anecdote right now. We're in the process of getting a new stove. Our stove just said, I'm done. And so even how we both reacted to that whole situation and purchasing it, I mean, it was the most stress-free thing that we have experienced together, right? And I noticed that, and my mother noticed that, right? And so it does reverberate. It changes things around you, right? And the support system that's here for you, it's not just myself, but because you're doing this in a group, you're in companionship, right? You could create a buddy system, but I'm here to be with you also. We meet twice a month on the 1st and last Saturday of the month. And the first Saturday, it's to introduce you to the themes, get you a greater understanding of the overall work that we're going to do that month. And then we culminate the month with a vibrational healing circle. But in between that time, you get to do the weekly exercises, and you get to meet with me one-on-one. And how you meet with me, or how often you want to meet with me, once a month, twice a month, or 4 times a month, it's up to you. But that will determine the price of your program, right? So you have a few options. You pay up front, you save 10% right off the bat, right? If you want to pay monthly, that's fine too. The billing happens on the 1st of the month. The only exception of us meeting in November, we don't meet on the last Saturday because it does fall on Thanksgiving weekend. So we meet on the last day of the month, November 30th, which is on the full moon. And I find that is a beautiful way to bring closure and culmination to the first cycle of this program. So if you're ready to join me, I do include a few more perks for you. Every participant will get a set of crystals that I've curated, as well as essential oil blends that I've made for you to help you in this journey, because I do believe in the help of our crystal allies and plant allies for this. You also get 10% off all my membership services, including membership services as well. I have a membership program. And you have access to all the teachings for up to 6 months after you're done with the program, right? So you can always go back to them. You can always reference them. But this for me is so useful because you also have access to me, right? I don't let you go. We can still work together. And I do offer a lot of workshops and healing circles and retreats. So you have an extra benefit of getting 20% off any of those. And lastly, before I put anything out to the public, you get first dibs. The most popular one that I have is the lunar tarot readings. Those I always open on the new moon. And they do go pretty fast. And so you would get first dibs on booking your own lunar tarot reading for yourself or for someone else. But aside from that, I really just want to thank you all for joining me and coming with me today to spend this time for yourself. And so as you go through your process, right, I really invite you to keep connecting to that seed or to that energy of your vision and your purpose that you wrote down. That's the beginning. You've said yes to it. You've connected to it, right? And whatever limiting belief you believe is not allowing you to meet it fully, take a moment to just reflect. What is that? Why is that? Right in this moment, and just really remembering, when are you at your best, right? And just take a moment to practice that. Even today, I'm at my best when, and just take a moment to do that, right? Or to tune into that. Maybe put a little reminder in your phone, right? There's those apps that you could just put a little note and then it shows up on a reminder, and it's, I think, a beautiful thing to do that for yourselves. Um, so the program will start, the first cycle of the program starts September 1st. So yes, it's either yes or no. But you don't have to decide today. You have some time, and I'm here available to talk with you. So if you want to talk more about it, definitely book an exploratory call with me. You could book it through my booking site. Um, and and yes, absolutely. So I've had several teachers and several elders who I've trained with. For me personally, I was trained through the Life Energy Institute with Gary Strauss. And through that, I learned a lot more about the origins of craniosacral practice, being an indigenous practice. Now, coming from Mexico, I am aware of the hueseros and the sobadores. Um, but I didn't realize that this was a practice in the Northeast with the Shawnee. They were called bone setters. And so one of the missionaries who worked with them, the son of the missionary, Sutherland, ended up adopting the bone setter techniques. And this is how we understand now osteopathy, right? The doctors of the bones. And so that is the primary work. I've also done my own work here locally with Erica Buenaflor, who's a curandera, several of the grandmothers, Grandmother Flor de Mayo, and learning from Nana Marina, the Mayan, and then my own peers here locally, Scott Smith, as well as in Mexico, Aseneth Macedo. So it's a beautiful circle that I continue to connect with. I've trained in other modalities, energy modalities like Reiki with Madre Jaguar and La Chi with Jordan Bayan. So I have an extensive experience, but also it looks like me. I'm a mix. And so all the work that I bring together is a mix, right? But it's something that has worked for me and that I hope will work for you as well. Yeah, I hope that answers the question there. And as well, if you're not ready for this to start in September, you can start in January or in May. I also have a membership program, so if you want to do that, you meet with me twice a month, and we can work on this together, right? But wherever you're at on this, if you decide to work with me, it'll be a great honor. And if you don't, I hope that whatever was shared with you today will help you, will support you, right? But you can reach out to me through Instagram or through my website or whatnot. But I really thank you all for your time and your energy. And I really just wish you a very beautiful, happy Sunday. But I'm here available if any of you want to take some time to ask questions, either in the chat or not. I'm actually going to stop the recording and stop the share as well, so that I could see you all in this moment.